By far, one of the biggest problems people have with the Akai MPK Mini, whether it's the Mark 1, 2, or 3, is its lack of control over your DAW, specifically when it comes to transport controls. The problem is that most people buying this kind of controller don't understand the MIDI portion of MIDI controller, and I'm here to fix that by showing you how to set up this keyboard, or really any keyboard in general, how to have transport controls, built-in shortcuts, and even control over your virtual instruments. Now, if you just want to learn how to control your MPK, there are chapters down below. You can just jump ahead and get onto it. But before we dive into it, I really want to give you a quick overview of what MIDI is in general so you can have a better understanding of how this actually works. I'm preferencing this right now. You may need to rewind to understand this, and that's more than okay. This keyboard does not make sound, as you probably know. What it actually does is it sends a series similar to binary code to your computer that your DAW then interprets to mean certain different MIDI messages. And there are two types of MIDI messages: system messages and channel messages. For our purpose, we're going to focus solely on channel. There are currently a maximum of 16 different MIDI channels, and they are used to send out something called MIDI events. And there are 7 basic MIDI events that pretty much any keyboard can do. The 7 basic MIDI events are note on, note off, program change, control change, pitch bend, and 2 different types of aftertouch. And these MIDI events are sent over that form of binary code in 3 different bytes. You have a status byte and then 2 data bytes that follow. The status byte tells the type of event, and the 2 data bytes give different parameters, and they come with a value between 0 and 127. This is why if you've ever messed around on a keyboard and you're hitting it as hard as you can, you'll sometimes see the velocity is coming up as 127 in your DAW. That just means that it's hitting the full maximum amount. Basically, this is how your controller tells your computer note on and play this pitch at this velocity. You have that status byte and then 2 data bytes following. Now, most DAWs already have common CC messages that are pretty much universal, and you can see a list of those here. What we're going to do is we're going to map our controls to some of those CC messages that aren't being utilized. Now, if you'd like me to go further into MIDI and how it actually works, because it's a bit of a deep dive, go ahead and leave that in the comments, and if there's enough interest, I'll make a video on that. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Now, let's actually get into programming this thing. Okay, so we've got our controller plugged in, so you should be able to see up here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to open the MPK software manager that comes with this device. Now, this is what it looks like when you open it, and as you can see, there's some stuff I've downloaded, some stuff I haven't. It's a little bit repetitive, but what we want is the MPK controller editing software, and Akai actually hides this from you on the MPK Mini Mark 3, which they didn't do on the Mark 2 and Mark 1. But the way to access that is you just click the control and hit Show Advanced Software. And you can see we have the MPK Mini editor for both the Mark 3 and the Mark 2. We're going to download the Mark 3 version. All right, so now that we've got this open, I want to show you how to navigate it just really quickly. If you go to File and you hit Send Program, whatever you have shown on this screen is going to be programmed to whatever bank you're assigning it to. So this is really easy to overwrite what is already programmed with the MPK. So be very careful. Don't mess around with this. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Get Program. I'm going to say Get Program 5 because that's what I have my Logic Pro program that comes from Akai. Everything's set up exactly how you'd want it to be. They did this so it is very plug and play. You already have some built-in controls. But one thing I would recommend you doing is if you come down to the bottom where it says arpeggiator, you can turn the clock from internal to external. And that's what I've done. The reason I recommend doing this is because now when you set your project tempo in your actual DAW, which is the majority of what you're going to be working with, you don't have to then reset your tempo on the Akai if you're trying to use the arpeggiator or note repeat. It's just automatically going to align with your DAW, and it saves quite a bit of time. So once you have that set, you would then hit File, Send Program, and we're going to send it to Program 5. Because that's where I currently have it. Your DAW that you use might be different, and you can see which ones you have just by getting into Get Program and just click around and see what pulls up. Like, for instance, this is my MPC Beats, which I never use, but here it is. So now if I hit Program Select in Pad 5, I don't know if you can see it here, but I'm now in Logic Pro and my BPM says external. If you mess up on any of this, Akai was pretty good in going ahead and giving you all of the software you need to reset. What you would do is just open Program, and here's pretty much all of the built-in programs that you could possibly want. They're available for you to download, at least on my computer. I did not download these from their website or anything. They just came with the install packages. So if you accidentally overwrite your Logic Pro, you can go ahead and just open it from here and then send it to whatever bank you want. Now we're going to come back into the editor, but right now let's go ahead and jump into Logic and show you how we can set up controls. All right, so now we're in Logic Pro. I have a new session open and I've went ahead and set up a native instrument. There's a reason for that and I'll tell you later. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the macro controls. Now it's going to be different based on your DAW that you're using, but in Logic Pro, the quick cut is B and you can open up your macro controls. Now, as you can see here, that if I turn my knobs, they're already linked. Now, this is because I hit that Logic Pad 5, but sometimes this is not going to work for you. If we wanted to learn something, if we want this device to be programmed to do something, all we have to do is click on what we want it to be changed. So I'm clicking on this first knob. Then I go up to Logic Pro, Control Surfaces, Learn Assignment for 2 scale root note. And now if I move this, it has learned that assignment already. That's pretty easy. Most people know how to do the step, or you can find a tutorial on it. What you can't find is how to actually map transport controls, and that's what we're going to dive into. Now, most people know that when you're playing pads, it sends a note on message. This is really used for when you're doing any kind of drum design or drum beat, that kind of thing. But if we hit our CC button, now these pads are strictly sending MIDI control changed messages. And as you can see, if I hit pad 3, it begins to play. If I hit pad 2, it's going to stop. Pad 1 rewinds. And I have it set up according to how it is on these bars up here. So if I hit pad 4, it's going to start recording. I'm just playing random stuff here, but as you can see, I've recorded. I want to stop recording. I just hit the stop button. Now we're there. I'm not having to reach up to my computer. Everything is staying here. Now, what if I don't like what I've played? Well, I've mapped pad 4 to be undo. But just having these built-in controls, this is that transport control that I was telling you about that is so valuable because you can keep your hands on your keyboard rather than having to move them onto the computer. Now, the way we set this up is the same exact way we just set up the macros, but you want to make sure that you have the CC button turned on, or else you're just going to play notes and it actually can cause quite a few issues. Then we're going to go to Control Surfaces, Learn Assignment for Rewind, and then we can hit this pad, and now this button is rewind for us. If we wanted to learn play, we hit play. And while it's playing, don't hit anything else. We can go into Control Surfaces, Learn Assignment for play, and we can hit whatever pad we want to be play. I'm not going to reassign it because I already have it. You can go through and do this for any parameter in your DAW that you want to have a quick cut to. And it's very, very valuable. And that is the biggest complaint people have, is that it doesn't have transport controls because they don't know how to set it up. Yes, it does take a little bit of groundwork, but it's not very time consuming. It's not very hard. And once you do it the first time, your DAW is going to remember it from here on out. So now I can go quickly from playing a beat to hitting my CC, and then we can have transport controls, just like that. It's one button, then a pad. That is the same transport controls that comes with the Arturia Mini Lab that so many people love because it has transport controls, but you still have to hit one button and then hit a pad. This is the same thing. You just have to set it up yourself. Now, I am going to show you how you can set it up to control certain instrument sets. I already have a complete control instrument up here. As you can see, it's Ethereal Earth. And I have no problem playing any of these notes, but if I try to move the knobs and faders, nothing is changing here. And the reason for that is complete control is not mapped. Now, what we don't want to do is go through and learn these knobs with the same exact control message that is coming from these, because then we'll be moving the macro and the actual instrument itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up our own custom program. That way, we can switch between, this is my Logic Pro, to this I have set up for native instruments. Let me show you how to do that. Now, we're going to go back into the MPK Mini 3 program editor, and what we're going to do is we're going to send the exact program that we have for whatever DAW we're using to a bank we know we're not going to use. So, for instance, I know I'm probably never going to use Program 3, which is the Akai MPC Beats. So this is one I can overwrite. So I'm going to go back into Get Program. I'm going to hit Get Program 5. This is my Logic program. Now I'm going to go File, Send Program, and I'm going to send it to Program 3. So now program 3 is another version of my Logic program. And right now they're completely identical. The reason you want your bass to be the same is because we're going to change what messages the knobs are sending, but we want the pad messages to be exactly the same. That way we still have transport controls even when we're controlling an instrument. So it's very simple. We're going to go ahead and name this whatever instrument set we're trying to control. So for my example, I'm going to name it Native Instruments. I'm just going to do INS. And for the knobs, what we're going to do to change is we're just going to change it from 70 everything to 80 everything. So delete the 7, send an 8. That's literally all you have to do. And now before we go back into our editor, we have to then send this program again to program 3. And now this is the same program that our MIDI device knows. So if I hit, let's go back to my original Logic Pro. If I hit pad 3, as you can see, it now says Native Instruments. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to go into this button right here. We're going to go to View, MIDI, Learned. And as we can see, we have the first knob selected. So we're going to move our first knob and it's going to learn that knob. So now let's go ahead and show that even if we're moving this fader, which is our volume, we're not actually changing the macro in Logic anymore. So we're controlling just the instrument, but our transport controls, oh, we're not on CC. See, that's something you have to have. Our transport controls are still working. And we are controlling just the instrument. Now, if we want to go back to controlling the Logic macros, we just hit Program Select, hit our program that we have mapped for Logic, and now we're changing the macro, but not the instrument. And that is it. We have set up the MPK to now have transport controls and control over my Native Instruments plugins just like that. And you can do that with pretty much any keyboard by having a basic fundamental knowledge of how MIDI actually works. If you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave it a like, subscribe to stay up to date, and leave a comment down below if you have any questions. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.